This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Wednesday, March 12th, 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host along with my son Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, folks. You're about to hear 3 hours of incredible programming, I believe, anyway. Well, so does Joe. Information presented to you in 3D, news, analysis, information you need to know in these perilous times. For the new listeners, folks, we broadcast live each and every weeknight, 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home base, HomelandSecurityUS.com. We're also simulcast by the good graces of the Christians United Broadcasting Network. I want to thank Troy for that. There you can find us at thehagmanandhagmanreport.com. That's thehagmanandhagmanreport.com. You've got to spell it all out and spell out the word and, 2 N's on Hagmann. The only author, columnist, that has been banned in more places than, I'm catching up to Steve Quayle. Wear that as a badge of honor. Folks, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. Thank you for your belief, your trust in us, your investment of time. We understand that you are listening to this program by choice. We really appreciate that, and I want to thank you for that. I also want to remind people, too, portions of tonight's broadcast are really brought to you by our partnership with Audible.com. That's Audible.com. If you go to our website, that's HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the link there. That'll take you to a very special page. That's the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. It's actually CFP Radio. And they will offer you a free trial, free month, and also a free download of an audiobook. And there are plenty to choose from. They've got 150,000 titles. It's a great service, folks. You get a free month and a free audio download. We're customers, and it's a great program. So just keep that in the back of your mind, and especially if you travel a lot or listen to audio programs a lot, there's a lot there to keep you informed as well as entertained. It also makes a great birthday gift. I want to wish Marianne a happy belated birthday. That was yesterday. Marianne, happy birthday. And with that, Joe, welcome.
Great to be here. I want to open tonight with a story this afternoon, as I
here we go.
Was eating my lunch.
How's the party?
I received, my phone was ringing, and I saw it was my dad, so I answered the phone, and after the crying settled down on the other end, he asked if I could come out and pull him out of a ditch. Apparently, we've had a couple nice days here. It's at 50 degrees and rather warm compared to what we were having. And today we just got, not blindsided, but we got hit with a huge, nasty storm with real heavy snow. I mean, there was a huge tree by my house that got taken down and destroyed a car because of how heavy the snow was. And anybody who lives in the Northeast, you know the difference between light and heavy snow. Well, this was a heavy one. But by the time I got up here and helped my dad out, we had to call a tow truck, as the glasses he's wearing apparently aren't working, or the steering wheel of the van. I'm not sure what it was. I know it wasn't operator error, but not a great way to start the day. Really the only time I've seen you get stuck in a while. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing what you could to just peer out the driver's side window and say, gee, you're stuck. It was, I've pretty much expended all of my frustration, anger, and I don't know what you'd call it, but it's just, folks, is this not getting old with you? I mean, this winter, the snow, the cold, really.
Yeah, and we have this, snowstorm we're getting now and cold temperatures tomorrow. We already broke a record in our town from 1885 for the lowest high, or the coldest high temperature, which was 6. And, we're getting this storm now. It's going to be cold, and then it's supposed to go back up to 50 degrees a day after tomorrow. So hopefully we will see those temperatures come back in soon.
Yeah, exactly. But I missed the driveway, missed where I was. Long story. I just can't even talk because I was just so frustrated by the fact that Yeah, I saw where I wanted to go. I just couldn't get there. And
I mean, one more thing today, it'll make a perfect day. He had a dentist appointment, which I know are his favorite, this morning, and then getting stuck in the snow this afternoon. Hopefully nothing else happens, because I wouldn't want guns to accidentally go off or holes to be put in walls. But we'll see if we can get through this broadcast.
Well, the trifecta is I've got to go back to the dentist tomorrow morning again to have it all finished up. So, yeah. Oh, man. And so, well, anyway, a lot of news information and what have you to get to. I received, by the way, Joan, I didn't tell you this. We didn't have a chance, of course. From the Center for Intelligence Studies, I received a 5-page analysis of the, this is from ACG Security Group Corporation. The author of this is Paul J. Paulson, and I'll be posting this on our website, which you probably think is a dead website, folks. It's not. It's the curious case of the missing airliner. It's an analysis, 5 pages, in terms of what the author and the ACG Center Security Group Corp believes, different theories, what could have happened. The bottom line on this is that, and I got to tell you, it's a pretty good analysis. The bottom line here, I'll just give you the last couple of paragraphs here. You know what might have happened? This Boeing 777 has a maximum flight range of, well, it's over 6,900 nautical miles. It's designed for medium to long range nonstop flight service, and it's got one of the best safety records in history. So this is what we do know. The Malaysia Airlines flight carrying 239 passengers and crew would only be the second fatal incident for this aircraft type. That's pretty significant to think about. And it's one of the most reliable aircrafts ever built, this according to a member of the NTSB. Now, based on the lack of hard evidence to the contrary, one cannot discount any possibility. I like the way that this author has approached this, because he's looking at all possibilities. One such scenario is simplistic in nature, yet true, brilliant in planning and execution. Please keep in mind that this is merely a best guess, much like everyone else's best guess, right? Knowing that the transponder had not activated, could it have been manually turned off or disabled by one of the people of interest on board? Perhaps. Without a transponder signal, it's virtually impossible to quickly locate the missing airplane outside of the normal methods. If somebody's trying to hide an airplane and they turn off the transponder, it makes it difficult. Now, one thing and I know people are probably tired of hearing about this, but I think it's worthy to note, and again, keep in the back of your mind, the plane is reported to have veered off course to the west, actually, after traveling northeast toward Beijing. There was some dispute as to the errant course. However, there's no evidence of the plane or wreckage on its stated route. So it could be, if it wrecked, it could very well be that it can be safely assumed that the plane was not on course. So if so, where was it headed? Did it attempt to land in perhaps Laos, Cambodia, Bangladesh?
There's a news story today that possible Chinese satellites have located the wreckage site, but there has been no confirmation. Just an article out of BBC, I believe, and a satellite image showing nothing.
I still have a problem with any type of wreckage scenario, given the fact that understanding the transponder thing.
Yeah.
Pretty much the conclusion reached, or the best guess reached, and this is a guess by the Center for Intelligence Studies in this confidential analysis, which author Paulson has agreed to allow us to distribute or to publish, is this. He says, what if the value of the target was not the people, but the plane. And he goes on with conjecture, of course, saying that maybe it was stolen for its value, not resale value, but once again the value that it would have to be used as a weapon of mass destruction. Folks, again, this is pure conjecture, but if you look at it based on the lack of debris being found, the fact that it was taken off course, it veered off course, it was way off, or definitively off course, decidedly off course, when it disappeared. Well, that's an important fact. So think about that. Now, how far could a 777 get to, let's say, a target, if that was the case? Wouldn't we have any type of defenses to protect against something loaded with a weapon of mass destruction? Let's say it was loaded with a whole bunch of bombs or explosives, or even worse, chemical agents or biologicals. Couldn't we blast it out of the air? Well, we saw how well that worked 11 or 13 years ago, didn't we? But of course, there we have a lot more conspiratorial angles to 9/11 in retrospect. Now, where does this fit in? I just would urge everyone to just keep this in the back of their minds, knowing that this happened, knowing that it's out there, and just they haven't found it yet makes me certainly suspicious. So we'll be posting this from the ACG Center for Intelligence Studies, and I think it's a pretty good analysis. Even if you don't agree with their conclusion or their best guess scenario, there's a lot of authenticated material in there that serves as basis for fact. Author Paulson has done a great job of verifying the facts. Perhaps nothing you don't know, but at least he has verified a lot of information and also offers a pretty intelligent scenario for what could very well be.
We have a bunch of different news items to get to today. We have rockets flying from an Iranian terror-based cell into Israel. We have Obamacare news. We have climate change news, NSA news, and much more. And I know you had something you wanted to start out with and to get into today. If you want, we can start out with the rockets in Israel. The Iran-backed terror group launches 60 rockets at Israel, this from 4 o'clock today. PIJ officially claimed responsibility for the attacks in an Arab statement posted online. The terror group referred to the operation as breaking the silence and claimed that it is payback for the continuous Zionist aggression against the people in Jerusalem, West Bank, and Gaza Strip, according to a translation of the statement. PIJ claims that it fired some 130 rockets and mortars and promised to release footage of the attacks. The Fatah Party, Al-Martyrs brigades also claimed responsibility for some Wednesday's rocket attacks. Israel experienced 74 rocket attacks in the entirety of 2013, according to public stats. Palestinian territories tied to Iran fired more than 60 rockets into Israel on Wednesday, causing widespread panic among the citizens and throwing into jeopardy months of U.S.-led negotiations toward a peace deal. The Iranian-backed terror group Palestine Islamic Jihad reportedly claimed responsibility for firing dozens of rockets into southern Israel. It goes on to report Al-Quds reported that more than 90 rockets had been fired in retaliation for what is Israeli aggression and Zionist settlements. Now, we had a response from Netanyahu, who said that there will be retaliation against those who launch the strikes. And this is, as this article says, is putting a damper on any peace deal talks, or is definitely not going to move them in the right direction, seemingly working against U.S. interests, which anything to delay that peace deal, aside from, obviously, we don't want to see anybody die, we don't want to see rocket attacks, but at the same time, we don't want to see this peace deal go through.
You know, that brings me to what Paul McGuire has said, and if you'll allow me just a little bit of monologue here, I suppose. Yeah, Paul McGuire had addressed this, and when he was on our show, wondering if in fact, if you look at Israel and look at what's going on there, are a couple of different things. Will America, for example, morph into the 10 kingdoms in Revelation? Now, keep in mind with the backdrop of what you just spoke about there about Israel, and we'll get to that in a second. If you look at Revelation chapter 17 and 18, we read about the coming commercial Babylon and religious Babylon. In Revelation 17:5, it says, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon, the great mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Now, obviously, archaeologists have told us that Babylon is the cradle of all human civilization. And that particular area, located on the shores of the Euphrates River, this city was the world's first attempt at a one-world government. Folks, don't forget that. A one-world economic system and a one-world religion, which God prevented from ever taking place. He confused, of course, the language. And it's no accident that the book of Genesis contains the first important, or the most important account of the first New World Order. So Babylon gives us pretty powerful clues as to what to expect in the future, if you look at it from that way, that biblical perspective. And that's why in the book of Revelation, Babylon reappears again. Babylon reappears in Revelation chapter 17, verse 12 and verse 13, where it's referenced in the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. So, many Bible scholars point to the fact that America is not mentioned specifically in Scripture. You've all heard this. Oh, well, America's not mentioned in the Bible. Well, of course not. Well, other scholars, and this depends on which side of the fence you fall on, many believe that America can be found in the Bible just by another name, Babylon. Well, the question is America Babylon? Some say yes, some say no. But when you look at that whole argument there, and I think it's important to kind of make the distinction. Is America Babylon? Well, people like John Price, authors like John Price, scholarly, believe it is. Steve Quayle believes it is. And Joe, there are others, right, that believe America is the modern-day Babylon.
Some believe it's Babylon. Some believe it's Mystery Babylon. I believe
the daughter of Babylon.
More a system which encompasses many countries or nations. And I'm not sure, but the system, it could be this materialistic system. It could be this democratic system.
Okay.
It could be a lot of things, but yes, reading through the Old Testament, Ezekiel especially and Isaiah, there are many references to Satan and his end-times kingdom, and it talks in many different ways. In Job 41, it talks about this also, the system that is set up in the end, and how it is all-encompassing. And we look to the story of the Israelites fleeing Egypt and all the miracles that God did for the Israelis. Well, it also says 7 times in the Bible at least to flee Babylon.
And some take that, if I'm understanding correctly, some take that to flee the United States, right? Or is that
or the system
to go rogue?
Right, get out of the system of Babylon. But that brings up another question: where do you flee?
And I'm a
where
believer.
do you run to?
Literally. Folks, and we deal with this all the time. I talked to Steve Quayle this morning. My goodness, that guy gets up early. Seriously, I thought I get up at 5, and that's usually late for me. My office phone is ringing at 6 o'clock, and he's 2 hours behind me. So, the phone rings in my office at well, I think this morning, maybe it was 5:30. And folks, you got to love Steve Quayle. I love the guy because it's, I always know it's him. Well, I don't always know it's him. I mean, he usually calls at that early hour, but it's always, hey, Doug, you there? Hey, Doug, Steve. And of course, he gets into the various things that he wants to talk about. But which reminds me, I just want to mention this, digress just a tad. On the 20th, a week from tomorrow, we're going to have Tom Horn on and Steve. The reason we're having Tom and Steve on is together they're going to be talking about Steve's new book, as well as how his new book, Xenogenesis, overlaps with the findings of Tom Horn. It's going to be a fantastic program. So that's next Thursday. Beginning back to Babylon in America. But Paul McGuire, in fact, I think we asked him directly, and at the time he didn't believe that America was Babylon. And I think there was some back and forth dialogue with Steve and Paul and others. I'm not sure where Paul stands on that. I know Paul's got a very open mind when it comes to research, as we all should. We all should have an open mind because we don't really know with precision a lot of the details. Should we know them? Well, it helps. But anyway, Paul McGuire gets into many prophets, seers, visionaries. I mean, take Nostradamus, for example, Edgar Casey, just to look at them as kind of a litmus test. How they reference, for example, Incan prophecies, Mayan prophecies, the mathematical equations about Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Giza, the sacred geometry and architecture of Washington, D.C. And the more Joe and I get into this, at least the more I get into this, you look at the architecture of D.C., and many have sent emails, or not many, but several. Thank you for sending me emails about this very topic. The more we look at this, the more we can see that there was this Masonic overlap planning that went into D.C. I mean, it's undeniable. And then with the money and the pyramid, and I know, folks, this is going over stuff that you already know this. But the Pentagon right now and other military agencies are using, and this is something I think we kind of just give lip service to this, plays a bigger role than we really have given the attention to. The Pentagon and other military agencies are using various new sciences, at least new to you and me, or new to the public, that involve the merger of physics, mathematics, and the occult. Now, they use these new sciences in part to predict the future. Now, we've seen this in the form of remote viewing. We've seen this in predictive programming. We've seen this in these web bots. We've seen this in even in the application of science fiction concepts. I mean, look at Isaac Asimov's psychohistory. Well, that makes it possible, supposedly, to predict future behavior and thoughts of billions of people through the use of computers and mathematics and algorithms and such. So, how do we know which prophecies, whether it's a modern day, when I say prophets or people that are influenced by both history and scripture? Well, in order for, because we have people that come on our show and they make references to, saying, I've seen this and I feel this is going to happen, or based on my research, this might happen. But don't forget, folks, in the Old Testament, in order for a prophet to be called from God, he had to have 100% accuracy in all of his predictions. Or what did they do to him? They stoned him to death. Boy, if we held that standard to internet prophets today, would there be stoning going on? But the ancient biblical prophets left us a pretty clear outline of some very precise prophetic events that are going to be taking place. And we're seeing more of them take place in our lifetime than at any other time in human history. And if you think about it, isn't this, with the electronics, the computer age, the ability, if you're in New York, to talk to London, or in my case, Wisconsin, with FaceTime on a cell phone without even trying, with the push of a button. I mean, it's amazing. So we have seen a lot of advances. Now, you go back to the prophet Daniel and other prophets. What was the most significant event by the prophet Daniel, for example, in human history that was mentioned in the Bible? Stan Dale talks about it. And Joe's like, what?
I was reading all the references in the King James Bible that used the word Babylon, so I was a little distracted there. It's 260 verses, 294 word Babylon is used 294 times in the Old and New Testament.
And by the way, we should do a program on the Bible, because the Bible's an interesting work. When I say interesting, obviously it's wholly in the inerrant Word of God. But what I'm saying is, looking at how the Bible is compiled and structured, and the facts of the Bible just are tremendous. But my question to you is, if you look at what the prophet Daniel said and other prophets, what's the most significant prophetic event in human history that would have occurred recently, of late, within the last 100 years? What would be the most prophetic? And folks in the chat room, if you want to venture your guess.
Well, Israel becoming a nation again.
Bingo. And to the person, I can't see exactly but the Bible code. Yeah, the Bible code too. We have to get into the Bible code as well. But exactly right. You're looking after the Jews scattered about the world across the nations for 2,000 years. You had Israel becoming a nation back in 47, when it was officially reformed as a nation, and the Jews began returning to the home. Now, and you might say, well, so what? Well, if you look at today's headlines and look at this prophetic utterances, these prophetic statements in the Bible, and you consider the fact that some of these events were driven by the events of the Holocaust, but the ancient prophets have said that, and even Jesus Christ has said that the nation of Israel would continually be the center of global conflict and war. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but in Zechariah 12, verse 12, the Hebrew prophet predicted, and listen to this, because this does play into what's happening today. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling to all. Well, actually, to all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege, both against Judah and against Jerusalem. Now, what's taking place today? And what's the spark behind it? Well, that very thing, the Obama-Kerry agenda. And this is not just Obama-Kerry, but it's certainly being exacerbated under this Obama-Kerry agenda. And it would have been Obama-Hillary agenda, and I think Hillary's got some role to play here. But the fact is, we're going to separate Jerusalem, divide Jerusalem, divide Israel, divide that land into a two-state area. Now, how can we do this when you've got, how many rockets, Joe, went into Israel today? Under
up to 130, almost 130. I see at least 60 hit, and we have retaliation from Israel also, as Netanyahu vows lots of noise in Gaza.
So yeah, and in fact, there's the name of the initiative, the Gaza rocket strikes, and it is, let me just pull up my notes here as I'm going through this, Operation Breaking the Silence, this Islamic Jihad. Now, follow the money trail and follow the globalist, well, at least at the lower levels, follow the command chain for Islamic Jihad, you're going to see the footsteps right through the American White House, because there is a Muslim Brotherhood component, that same component that was active in the Arab Spring. Now, of course, there will be deniability about this, regarding this, but the Muslim Brotherhood has its grips on the Islamic Jihad. Islamic Jihad, they're the foot soldiers for the Muslim Brotherhood. They're firing the rockets into Israel under the operational name, Breaking the Silence. Yet, despite this, no, they're not. I mean, I believe there have been some casualties. Now, Israel's Air Force, they've begun retaliating, and of course, they're going to retaliate in mass. And this is something else, too, I want to bring up at this point. A lot of people will say, well, it's this Jewish Zionist agenda. It's almost like mentioning the word rapture when you've got a group, half of the group is pre-trib and half is post-trib. When you talk about the nation state of Israel, it's like people just start going after each other. And folks, look, we have to understand that the globalists that are involved at the highest levels, yeah, they are making some, in my view anyway, and this is from my research, but please check it out on your own. At the highest levels of the globalist structure, it doesn't matter whether you're a Jew, a Gentile, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a Rothschild or saying, well, the Rothschild or Jewish lineage, or this is a Jewish plot. It's not. It's a multi. That's like saying, well, this is a Democrat plot here in the United States to usurp the Constitution. Well, if you look closer at this, both the Republicans and Democrats, if that's the dividing line, or if that is the actual the sole definition you're going to use, then your statement goes out the window, or the authenticity of the statement goes out the window, because it's both the Republicans and Democrats. So in this case, you might see it, or people might see it, as a Jewish conspiracy, but it's not. Yes, there is a Jewish component, but there's also a non-Jewish component. So don't ascribe evil to a group of people in this particular case because you're thinking too small. It would be like saying, well, it's the Democrats' fault. Yeah, man, you can go on so many websites today, and you got Free Republic people blaming Democratic Underground people, and you got Democratic Underground people blaming the Free Republic people, and it's a mess. And they're both arguing at the sandbox level, the kindergarten level. It's not that. No. That's akin to being entertained by and arguing with your neighbor about the professional wrestling that you're watching. That's too low of a level. But anyway, history shows us what can happen when a little nation can draw bases into a regional conflict and create a world war. This is what we're seeing. Bush and Obama both attempted to involve the United States into a Middle Eastern war. Obama is still doing that. Bush did it and wanted to do it bigger. Primary reason for that is that all throughout history, the Middle East and what's been called Eurasia has been the geographic region that many great empires and world leaders have attempted to control, because whoever controls this specific area, again, Eurasia, or the Levant, or that area in the Middle East, they control the world power. They control the future. And yes, I'm kind of checking the chat room as well. Oh, Rome has got a lot to do with it. The Vatican has a lot to do with it. But please, folks, when we talk about the Vatican, for example, people will hear that and say, well, then Catholics are bad. No. Because I've met a lot of great Catholics. We can't say that. We can say that, and a lot of Catholics that believe in Jesus Christ and don't agree with this Vatican influence, this Jesuit influence. So we have to be very careful with painting with a broad brush in all cases. Because, we have to identify the culprits with precision, so we don't, in my view anyway, because otherwise we're just verbally carpet bombing, and that's not right. I mean, that's not ethical, and it's not. I don't believe it's what we're called to do. It'd be like, and this is an example I use for my own purposes to keep it straight in my mind, as simple as it is. I like simple. It'd be like my wife, for example, working at GE, General Electric, in a low-level position, and having the hierarchy at General Electric somewhere overseas, having been infiltrated by this globalist cabal and controlling things. Well, where she works, I mean, they're just doing, putting a round peg in a round hole, not understanding anything about the bigger picture. Is there culpability there? Well, one can argue there could very well be, but when we're behind the eight ball right now, trying to bring people up to a certain level of education, you might want to give that person some slack. But it'd be like saying, well, let's bomb the heck out of, let's take out that factory, that GE factory, where the people are putting the round peg in the round hole there because they're bad people. No. Let's identify the proper people as the culprits. But anyway, as I said, whoever controls this vital area, going back to Eurasia, this Levant, this period this geographical area in the Middle East, controls the future, controls world power. There's a secret shadow government controlled by an occult elite that's been spending trillions of dollars in preparation for a global thermonuclear war. We are going to get attacked with nuclear weapons from a nation like Russia or China or a group of nations. And but a lot of people are running around today saying, well, we're going to get attacked, anytime now. Watch out. And what happens is we fall into this mindset where we're victims of terror fatigue. Remember after 9/11, and believe me, I fell right into this trap. Oh, the Muslims are going to do this to the water supply. The Muslims are going to do this to the power grid. The Muslims are going to do this to the aircraft. The Muslims have infiltrated everywhere in this country, and they're going to do this and that. Well, okay, let's look at it. Did that happen? No. Was there infiltration? Absolutely. But there's a danger, I believe, folks, when we overstate our case. And there's only so many times you can say, well, the stock market's going to crash on April 11th, or the thermonuclear war is going to break out on April 19th, or whatever. Pick a pivotal hinge moment event. In my view, looking at the headlines of today, and that includes that airliner, that includes the shelling of southern Israel from the Gaza Strip there by the Islamic Jihad, that includes Ukraine and Crimea. You've got to take a look at all of this and look at the bigger picture, because the bigger picture at the very end, who's pulling the strings? The dollar will collapse. I've got no doubt in my mind that the U.S. dollar will collapse. But it would be dangerous and irresponsible to say it's going to collapse on April 11th or March 19th, or pick a date, pick a year. And if anybody, and I do suspect, because I've been through enough investigations, real investigations, If you have somebody, if you're an investigator looking at a case, and Joe knows this pretty well, if you've got an investigator, or if you're an investigator looking at a case, and somebody comes up to you and gives you a whole pile of information, including dates and times and whatever, and future dates even, you better take a look at that person. Seriously, how would they know? But anyway, there is a secret shadow government controlled by this occult elite, and we will, in fact, be involved in a thermonuclear war. I don't have any doubt in my mind, just as I don't have any doubt in my mind that the economy is going to collapse. And I also believe that foreign troops are here, and I believe that they're going to invade us, and I believe that they're the Mexican border, the porous Mexican border, and the border from moving down from Alaska and Canada. I believe that to be. But I also believe that there are steps that have to take place before that happens. And I hope, folks, that you can see you understand what I'm talking about. The United States, which for the moment is still the world's most powerful empire, I suppose. We've been poking at the Middle East through the Arab Spring. We've been funding Islamic terrorists. We've been poking at Russia and indirectly China. We've been developing and advancing counter-strike weapons, both nuclear and conventional, in order to defeat others, which is what we should, to defend our country. But we've also been, and if you look at the bigger pattern here, we've also been forming nation alliances. And right here, what you see taking place at the level of Ukraine and Crimea is the formation of these alliances that ultimately will form this 10 economic region confederation. But what we're seeing right now, the people who are looking at this, in my estimation, and Joe and I have researched this a lot, we are preparing for World War, specifically World War III or IV, depending on your outlook, but I'd like to say World War III. The Cold War, of course, being that unnumbered war between World War II and World War III. We have been building up militarily. We have been pushing the buttons in Syria. We have been pushing the buttons in Ukraine with our intelligence assets. We have been pushing the buttons in Africa, in the nation, all throughout Africa. We have been fighting proxy wars at the nation-state levels, and as I said before, the biggest chess piece here, maybe at the level of a knight or bishop or even queen. I'll give it a queen status. In fact, I would give it a queen status. Is the economic world, or the U.S. is the world reserve currency, because once that is stripped, we can no longer police the world, or can no longer be the world's policeman. And you might say, "Oh boy, that's great. We shouldn't be." Well, you're correct. We should not be. But there's a however there, and that however, how this system was built, we've established right now. We're at the point of being the petrodollar. Well, you take away that military ability, whether by force or by attrition or by whatever agenda method, you take away our economic system. The dollar collapses, our economy collapses. And a lot of people, and please follow me on this, I know you might get tired of hearing me say this, people say, "Oh, great, we're going to get rid of the Fed that way." Do you think the people at the Federal Reserve, the movers and shakers, the powers, the people behind the creation of the Fed, the people who created the Fed, the generations beyond that, do you think that they're going to allow that to happen and just kind of take their balls and bats and mitts and go home? No. What they're going to be replaced with is something even worse. So to those people who are looking at this and posting and publishing and writing and saying, oh, yeah, it's great. Going to get rid of the Fed. Please understand one thing. Be careful what you wish for. Yes, we need to get rid of the Fed, but not on the timetable or not in the manner in which it is being done by the globalists/Luciferians. We need to understand that cannot be done. And if it is done, people are going to starve in the streets of America. People are going to starve in third world countries. People are going to starve all across the world. You, ladies and gentlemen, listening to this, wherever you're listening to this, are going to feel the effects of such a collapse. And you could even become a casualty. Look at, for example, right now in the news, and how I got off into this, and I told you I wanted just to kind of mention this, as we have seen Operation Breaking the Silence taking place right now, these Palestinians in the Gaza Strip who fired more than, did you say over 100 rockets? Yeah, it was a tremendous number of rockets. You've got to ask yourself, why now? Out of all the days, why now? Well, what's in play right now? And Joe, you've talked about this before here recently in a couple of different shows. You've talked about this two-state solution, and I don't even like that name, but I get the report. But you've talked about the Kerry essentially giving a green light, and I believe that he has given the green light. He is no friend. We are no friend of Israel.
Right.
There's given a green light for this. Go ahead.
And a article from not too long ago, Obama to Israel, time is running out. He said this on the 3rd of March, that time was running out and that Israel will face a sediment of international isolation and demographic disaster if Netanyahu refuses to endorse a U.S.-drafted framework for an agreement for peace with the Palestinians. He also went on to say that it could be, what was the term he used? That it would be, oh goodness, I can't find it here. It was a very extreme choice of words for the president. But basically that they would be facing annihilation, or they would be facing a time of trouble without any allies, surrounded by its enemies. And, well, if they did not let this two-state solution go through. Now, today, Kerry was singing to another tune on climate change, saying he wants climate change to be a top-tier diplomatic priority. And this from Fox News. Secretary of State John Kerry, deeming climate change a top-tier diplomatic priority, has decided to make a controversial topic the subject of his first policy initiative and instructing U.S. emissaries worldwide to push the agenda. Now, Kerry was taking trips back and forth from the Middle East, from America to the Middle East, to push this two-state solution, this Israeli peace deal. And they had set a deadline sometime in April for this deal to be agreed upon by this date. Well, apparently that's taken a back seat now, or is being misdirected with Kerry's latest talk about climate change being a top-tier priority. Their top priority is this Israeli peace deal, and we know that the timing of the blood moons is very strange. A lot of people have been talking about that, falling on Jewish holy days, Jewish feast days, being the first time since the 67 war, and then
Correct.
Before that, in 1947-48. So a lot of people are looking at this as a very significant time for prophecy. And with the Ukraine-Russia situation breaking out and several other distractions or run-up to more serious events, we still have this two-state solution peace deal being worked on at full steam ahead by the administration that is in Washington right now, and they're trying to force the Israelis into accepting this deal. Now, are these rocket attacks today? Reading that these attacks last year, I think they said there were 79 total in the year 2013. Well, they almost surpassed that in today's attacks alone. Is this increase in rocket attacks today, does this have anything to do with trying to bring them closer to an agreement? We know that through wars, through conflict, they bring their solutions.
Exactly, and Stan Dale was talking about this last night, wasn't he? Israel, as we often have said, is God's timepiece, prophetic timepiece.
Right, and man is trying to through social reorganization and manipulation, is trying to take it upon himself to decide what's best for God's land.
Correct. All right.
And that will not end well for any involved, even if it's just our government.
Right.
Will our citizens not suffer from that?
Yes. Now, okay, so we know what's going on right now in the Middle East with respect to Israel and the salvo of rockets from Gaza striking southern Israel. We know that all of a sudden now tensions are on the rise. Well, why is this? Do you think, and I always like to ask the basics, why? Why now? Well, I'll tell you why, but go ahead.
The tensions are not just, between nation and nation. I don't know how many people have noticed the level of regular people who have no idea of Bible prophecy, don't even believe in God, are seeing people being more hostile, being more angry towards each other for no reason. There seems to be a level of aggression that most people have taken, especially among strangers. It used to be come out of your house and say hi to your neighbor. Now it's shut up, or you're going too fast, or you're in my way, or get out of my way. The regular human psyche seems to be inflamed without people even knowing it.
Precisely, on a national and international level. And don't think for 1 minute these globalist, Luciferian, satanic people don't understand this human psyche. And you might think this is crazy, but, the weather has a lot to do with this. But I don't want to go down that road too far, but sticking with, for example, the Israeli and Gaza strikes, the salvo of rockets from Gaza to southern Israel. Why now? The answer to that question is simple, in my view. If you look at the world view, or look at what's going on all across the world, and understand that the players have a program. For example, we have talked about this in previous programs. You have a coalition of countries right now, the United States, Saudi Arabia, Great Britain, and Israel. Imagine Israel and Saudi Arabia being on the same team. Well, they are. And the same players who were involved in certain aspects, for example, Libya and Benghazi. And this is why I believe we're never going to get straight answers from the people in Congress about Benghazi, or we haven't gotten them, and Hillary Clinton in particular, is because if you look at what happens here, we are at war with other nations. What we're seeing is the blowback by proxy. So the attack, the salvo of rockets from Gaza, it's not from a group of Islamic terrorists acting with autonomy here. You've got Russia coming out and saying, okay, you're attacking me, and you can put the word attack or attacking in quotes. You're attacking me or hitting on me, making life miserable for me in Ukraine, in Crimea, and, well, in Syria, and you're not letting up, and we've told you to stop. So you've opened up another front, for example, against our ally Assad in Syria by way of Iraq. Well, guess what we're going to do? We're going to open up another front, and we're going to open it up in Gaza. This is a tit-for-tat type operation. Nothing happens globally in a vacuum, and certainly nothing happens by accident. You can bet, and there are plenty of many respected global leaders who have said that nothing happens by accident. All of these hinge moment world events are orchestrated, manufactured, and planned in advance, or at least planned far enough in advance that this will have an effect on what's going on. So you've got, think about it this way, you've got the American intelligence or Western intelligence that took down Libya, and just picture Hillary in the room with that reporter with a smile on her face, laughing about taking out Gaddafi. Don't forget, Gaddafi at the time, and since 9/11, was cooperating with the United States in turning over Al-Qaeda terrorists, the true Al-Qaeda terrorists, the ones that went off and were posing a real danger that were not being handled, of course, and some that were being handled. So you've got Gaddafi taken out, and Hillary laughing about it. Well, Hillary is part of. You've got the various groups that should be abolished by the Logan Act, including but not limited to the Council on Foreign Relations, and you go back with Brzezinski and others. But that said, what we have done against Russia, and to a lesser extent, well, to an equal extent, China, with respect to Syria, via Libya, is now being answered by Putin from Gaza. Because Israel is on the side that's creating the mischief. Now, we're seeing this ever-expanding, ever-widening global proxy war without really seeing the people behind it, the war, or behind it, the proxies. Just as North Korea is a proxy of China, Syria is a proxy of Russia, and so too is the Islamic Jihad, to a lesser extent, the proxy of Russia, as was Al-Qaeda or the Taliban a proxy of the U.S. during the Afghanistan in the 80s against Russia. I hope, folks, you can see at least this gives you some sort of context in which to view what's going on in Israel, rather than just say, "Wow, this is really things are happening all over the place." Yes, they are, but it's happening for a reason, and I hope you can see the reason now. Does this make Russia better than the United States? No, and there's a tendency to deify, in certain respects, Putin. One can say Putin has perhaps the moral high road in this case, but folks, Putin is still Putin. Don't forget that. And Russia, at least the powers in Russia, are still at their core communist, and communism at its core is a tool of the globalists, and the globalists, of course, are the very people who are funding all sides of all conflicts in order to bring in the New World Order. And I hope that provides some context for you, rather than just willy-nilly, and I know you folks don't do this, but others do. They willy-nilly post on forums, and they add their 2 cents without having the context. And that's not to denigrate them at all. It's just to put things in perspective, to add to the conversation, the intellectual conversation, at a level where it should be. With that, we've reached the top of the first hour, the end of the first hour, actually. It's been a quick first hour. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hagmann Report. We'll be taking your phone calls through the other second half of this hour. In the first half, we're going to hit some domestic news. We have a new law that passed by the House, Enforce the Law Act, a bill pushing back against Obama's imperialist presidency. The House of Representatives passed the Enforce the Law Act Wednesday, a bill designed to push back against the numerous unilateral moves the Obama administration has used to circumvent the law. 5 Democrats joined Republicans in passing the bill by a 233 to 181 vote. H.R. 4138, sponsored by Representative Trey Gowdy, a South Carolina Republican, would authorize the House Senate to sue the executive branch for not enforcing laws and provide an expedient process through federal district courts. The bill is one of several the House GOP is pushing to combat the imperial presidency. The administration has unilaterally altered Obamacare at least 20 times. Most recently, the Wall Street Journal reported that millions have been exempted from the individual mandate due to rule changes. The administration also announced last week that individuals would be able to keep their so-called substandard health insurance plans that do not comply with Obamacare until October of 2017. Additionally, Obama unilaterally instituted the DREAM Act by creating a deferred action program for youth illegal immigrants and changed work requirements in welfare.
I got to tell you, that, folks, that is so important. Have you heard anything, even the slightest mention, even at CPAC? Okay, the most conservative of the conservative Republicans or most conservative of the conservative politicians. Did you hear anything about this? Maybe in a form that really didn't represent the truth of what's going on. If we really had truly conservative constitutionalists in our government, they'd be screaming, stomping, and putting an end to this stuff. But yes, this virtual passage of the DREAM Act, if you will. But tell us more about this, Joe.
From Obamacare to welfare and education reform to our nation's drug enforcement and immigration laws, the president has been picking and choosing which laws to enforce. He said, in place of checks and balances established by the Constitution, President Obama has proclaimed that I refuse to take no for an answer, and that where Congress won't act, I will. Throughout the Obama presidency, we have seen a pattern. President Obama circumvents Congress when he does not get his way. That is from a good latte, a Representative Goodlatte. And it goes on listing a number of offenses and things that the Obama administration, in their minds, the representative minds, he has done to work around the laws of the land, work around the lawmakers of the land, and has also, in this law, this Enforce the Law Act, Obama has threatened to veto this bill requiring him to follow the law. And this is a separate article stating as follows: President Obama is threatening to veto a law that would allow Congress to sue him in federal courts for arbitrarily changing or refusing to enforce federal laws because it violates the separation of powers by encroaching on his presidential authority. The power bill purports to assign Congress to sue the president over whether he has properly discharged his constitutional obligation to take care of the laws be faithfully executed exceeds constitutional limitation. That from the White House Office of Budget Management said Wednesday in a statement of administration policy. Congress may not assign such power to itself, nor may it assign the courts to task of resolving such generalized political disputes. So we just have a legislative mess. We have a Congress taking actions that are sure not to be passed into law and adding to just a bunch of political theater in my mind. And that's what it will boil down to. Nothing. There will be no changes. And the executive branch, regardless if it's Obama or George Bush were to be reelected, it's not going to matter. The presidents are going to use their executive action or whatever action is necessary because the Congress, the Senate, and the executive branch are all working towards the same goals. So this being is just theater.
You're correct. It is theater. We've got Obama acting as Pharaoh, and I intentionally use that word Pharaoh, descriptive term, because are we not seeing a lot of, well, if you look at the symbolism of, and I'm going to go back a ways to 2008, of course. What is Obama's logo, branding, that symbol that he has? Why? We can talk, for example, about what's going on in Connecticut with the guns, with the gun registration and the registration, or the making 350,000 people instant felons. And we can talk about this being perhaps the flashpoint with respect to this pro-anti-Second Amendment, depending on which side you're on. But let's take a few steps back here, because we didn't get here all of a sudden. We didn't get to where we're at all of a sudden. And if we back up a ways and we see the alleged massacre at Newtown, when I say alleged, I'm using that deliberately because there are unanswered questions about that do need to be answered, but respectfully, or respectful of those people who were reportedly victimized and victims of this. Now, don't take me for somebody who doesn't believe it happened or didn't happen. I'm just saying it didn't happen most assuredly the way they said it happened. Now, but let's go back even further, because, you know, again, I'm a big believer in the big picture. There is this secret occult plan for America. America, the new Atlantis, the new center of the New World, or and I shouldn't say the new center, the center for the New World Order.
In Manly P. Hall's Secret Destiny for America,
thank you. Yes.
In the last chapter, it reads as this: "In America shall be erected a shrine to universal truth, as here arises the global democratic commonwealth, the truth wealth of all mankind, which is designed in the foundation that men shall abide together in peace and shall devote their energies to the common cause of discovery. The power of man lies in his dreams, his visions, and ideals. This has been the common vision of man's necessity in the secret empire of the Brotherhood of the Quest, escalating to fulfilling the destiny for which we in America were brought into being."
Okay. Now think about that, and think about all the events that are taking place in America today. And go back in time. In 1928, there was a researcher by the name of David Flynn who wrote extensively about Manly P. Hall. Now, here's a quote. "There exists in the world today, and has existed for thousands of years, a body of enlightened humans united in what might be termed an order of the quest. It's composed of those whose intellect and spiritual perceptions have revealed them, or to them, that civilization has a secret destiny." Now, stop right there for a second. If we are talking about the New World Order, this is a term that's thrown around all the time, and it's almost used indiscriminately. Who are we talking about? And what's their belief system? Who specifically? I mean, can we point to somebody and say, "Oh, yep, that guy right there"? Well, and what's their belief system? Because we have to break this down, I believe, to its simplest component, and agree on the simplest components, or at least agree in the majority of those in order to go forward, or at least understand it correctly. Because there are a lot of suppositions out there that are being misunderstood and even misrepresented. Manly P. Hall wrote in The Secret Destiny of America, which, Joe, you referenced as well, European mysticism was not dead at the time the United States of America was founded. The hand of the mysteries, controlled in the establishment of the new government for the signature of the mysteries, can still be seen on the Great Seal of the United States. Careful analysis of the seal discloses a mass of occult and Masonic symbols, chief among them the so-called American Eagle. And I got an email on this before about the American Eagle versus the Phoenix.
Right, and
okay.
In his book, Manly P. Hall's book, it talks about the founding what do they call them? The seals, the images of the country.
Right.
And it talks about how Benjamin Franklin, was saying, this is not an eagle, this is a phoenix.
Which, by the way, folks, is a mythical bird, so don't go trying to find it in the trees. The American eagle upon the Great Seal is but a conventionalized phoenix. This, according to Manly P. Hall. Now, do you believe it? No. I mean, you look at the back of a dollar bill or the Great Seal, and what do you see? Do you see a phoenix? No, you see an eagle, right?
Also,
these people see a phoenix,
a pyramid,
right?
And you see the phoenix. The Great Seal is the phoenix, which they say is the symbol of reborn in wisdom. You see the all-seeing eye, which is the eye of their God, not the eye of God of the Bible.
And I had somebody explain or say this to me too. If civilization was wiped out and they came back, another civilization, we'll say from another galaxy or whatever, came back to, we'll say, the United States and looked at the architecture of the Washington and the seals, the stuff on the coins and all this, the symbolism on the money, where it says one nation under God or in God we trust, regardless of what motto it would be, the question would be asked, and legitimately so, which God were they worshiping? Which God was the United States worshiping?
Let's see if this clears it up. It says, the American eagle, actually a phoenix, selection of the fabulous bird of the ancient, seems to have been the intention of the designer of the great nation seal. The phoenix is a symbol of the reborn in wisdom. The design on the reverse of the great seal is even more definitively related to the order of the quest. The pyramid and the all-seeing eye represent the universal house surmounted by the radiant emblem of the great architecture of the universe. These three symbols in combination is more than chance or coincidence.
Exactly. And folks, if you're listening to this and saying, well, why are you going over such basic stuff? Because when you go to your neighbor or your Uncle Fester at the Thanksgiving table, or in this case, perhaps we might even get the Memorial Day picnic, and you talk about this, he'll say, well, what makes you say, it's a phoenix? Well, now you've got some answers here.
Well, and the importance of this is not just from American conception. These seals go back to what the Atlantis was all about, and even more so, these seals are means of communication. I have a book here called Living Philosophy. I'm not sure if it's a textbook, an old school textbook, or whatnot, but it talks about symbolism and the arts, and it talks about symbolism as a means of communication. Now, it goes on to suggest in this book that...
Hang on one second before you go on further. You make a good point, and this is off script. Actually, we don't have a script that we're working from, but this is kind of a left turn here. There is, I believe this, folks, and if you look at the various... if you look, for example, at some of the press conferences that are held, especially inside the Oval Office, where you've got dignitaries, and I use that term loosely, or elected officials, elected leaders like Biden and Obama in one place along with others, watch their hand gestures, watch their positions, watch what they have in their hands, look at what they carefully, because I would contend, and I believe I can make a case for this, that a lot of times there is actual unseen communication taking place. For example, can you think of an example? I was trying to think of an example here that would be readily apparent that we could use. Well, I know Alex Jones.
Use a street sign.
Okay, all right.
You have any kind of, we'll say where two lanes merge into one. You have the symbol of an arrow, and where it has two roads, and one arrow is pointing towards the straight arrow. And like many other signs in driving on the side of the road, you can look at a sign and understand, that what it's saying. But in this book, it talks about art being as communication. It goes on to say that there mystics, certain views from mystics for whom art reveals the ideal, universal, and absolute, and those who think their art is a language of the emotions, the person who is considered to have led a genuine insight into the abiding and significant elements of life or nature usually feels a compulsion to share that experiences with his fellow man. Leo Trotsky gives a clear-cut presentation as art of communication. It says, speech transmitting the thoughts and experiences of men serves as a means of union among them, and art serves a similar purpose. The peculiarity of this latter means that of intercourse, distinguishing it from intercourse by means of words, consistent in this, that whereas by words a man transmits his thoughts to another, by art he transmits his feelings. And it goes on just from there that symbols can equate to a universal language that can be expressed throughout time without constraints of time. So when you look at, the symbols of, well, take for one, we know after the Tower of Babel, we had the Great Flood, destroyed what was brought here on earth, the corrupted knowledge which man was not supposed to know. Yet through these symbols, and we'll take the symbol of Freemasonry, for example. Everybody knows when they see the symbol of Freemasonry what it is. It's a Freemason lodge. It has the G and the compass, and the G is supposed to stand for knowledge or Gnosticism. And that's basically a universal understanding, especially among those initiated into those belief systems. We have all these belief systems that are not of God. We know in the third commandment, second or third commandment, what it says about images. Thou shalt not create any image of anything on earth above or in the earth, or any likeness of anything on earth. There's a reason for that. And it's not just because people worship those images as gods. There's reasons behind the Ten Commandments, and especially that commandment. And we are told, as you referenced Revelation earlier, the mark of the beast gives life unto a what? A image. The image of the beast. I mean, we can...
Right. Well, yeah, and you kind of went down the road, which is fine. But I contend right now, it's my contention based on a lot of research. If you look at various... what do I want to say? Photo ops at the Oval Office, or even across the pond. If you look at what's going on in British Parliament or various press conferences, I believe that you will see individuals engaged in this insider talk, or providing insider information, or communicating with other insiders. I believe that there is this wink and a nod type stuff going on. It's an insider's club, truly an insider's club. And it's global in nature. And people might say, wow, you're just seeing shadows on the wall, or you're looking through this, trying to look through a crystal ball. No, I think we could, just as we've seen, for example, you can see various elected leaders engaging in Masonic handshakes. And I think that there are perhaps there still are ample examples on YouTube, for example, of various leaders engaged in these particular hand signals or handshakes. Now, to take that to the way some people, even some of these leaders, hold their hands, they mean things. Now, once again, I don't want you to think I'm going too far out in the weeds here, but if you're, and I gave this example before, a friend of mine, his wife was kidnapped. He was a banker, his executive, and his wife was kidnapped and killed, and the husband and wife team were ultimately caught. Well, the husband, that was the actual kidnapper, was in prison, during which time the wife was outside. And the way they communicated was through certain ways in the publications in the newspaper, and this was somebody had discovered this, and it was this insider communication kind of thing. Well, this is what we're talking about on a larger scale. If you've got a criminal conspiracy, for example, at that level, don't you think that you've got a criminal conspiracy, or could have, or don't you think that you could perhaps understand or acknowledge that a criminal conspiracy could be taking place in the same fashion or similar fashion at the highest levels of our government, especially as they have been inbred and implanted into our culture? Is a Trojan horse would, a virtual, it's as if we have, well, we do have, the enemies are within our gates. A Trojan horse has been unleashed within our kingdom. I mean, poised before our cities, gates, and walls. And of course, the Trojan horse I reference represents the art of deception and the science of warfare. And indeed, and it's the appearance of art and the appearance of science which conceals the war machine itself. And we can get into a lot of this with respect to Masonry and how that's come about. But I think if you look at the secret occult plans for America, and just with what Paul McGuire has written extensively about, we can go all the way back, for example, to the architecture of Washington to see the symbolism. We can see we've got numerous references by Manly P. Hall, who has wrote the Secret Destiny of America. You've got European mysticism. You've got just this incredible amount of information out there. And I would urge everyone, certainly, to do their own research, to see how far this goes. And you can make up your own mind. But there was one part here that I wanted to specifically mention, and again, Paul McGuire talks about this. If you go back to the archaeological reports regarding the possibility of discovering the long-lost Atlantis, for normal folk like you and me, you might think, well, Atlantis, why would I even care? Well, there's a reason that we should care. But if you get into whether Atlantis was a real place or not, two scientists, Paul Weisenwig and Pauline, I can't recall her last name, but using this robot submersible mechanism, had alleged, and this is recently, that they found the ruins of this ancient city submerged off the coast of Cuba. And many believe, among their peers, that to be the lost continent of Atlantis, referenced by Plato and others. Well, according to this report, and this has been largely snuffed, for lack of a better term, the report has. Within the city, they reportedly found giant pyramids and Sphinx-type architecture and other very large and very interesting, when I say large, buried but large structures. Now, evidence would suggest that the city was flooded by the rising waters as the ice melted from the north, and at the end of the last major ice age, and it continued to really envelop various continents and such. So this is how, for example, Atlantis, at least by the accepted science realm, how Atlantis supposedly sank. Well, if you look at the works, and I'm looking at my notes here, journalist Louise Ferdinand, Atlantis was reportedly discovered decades, if not a century ago. But all access to it was restricted during and then subsequent to, and think about this, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now, that's just something that I found is interesting. The U.S. government discovered this mythical Atlantis, during the missile crisis of Cuba back in the 60s. How? Well, nuclear submarines cruising the various waters found structures in the very deep parts of the sea with a pyramid in the Gulf. And they shut down that site. They took control of it, all of the area around it, so that it would not get into the hands of the Russians. So we could perhaps deduce from this, could we not, that if we look at the Cuban Missile Crisis, there has been this modern-day quieting or modern-day censoring of anything with respect to Atlantis. Why is Atlantis important? Because the belief system of the Luciferians, and if we go back to Manly Hall, as Joe had mentioned, and others, America was planned to be the new Atlantis. This goes back to Sir Francis Bacon, the occult societies in the 1600s. So it's important to understand what Atlantis was really all about. And I'll mention this again, Manly Hall. And I think, Joe, you referenced this as well. There exists in the world today, and has existed for thousands of years, a body of enlightened humans united in what might be termed an order of the quest. It's composed of those whose intellectual and spiritual perceptions have revealed to them that civilization has a secret destiny. So the reason I'm driving this point home, when we look at what's going on in the Middle East, when we look at what's going on in Ukraine, when we look at what's going on domestically here, when we look at Obama and his minions and his handlers and his associates and himself and all of this, Obama's got multiple identity crises. Is this just some sort of low-level chicanery to keep, just to merely cover up Obama's ineligibility for the presidency with respect to the Constitution? Bigger than that. Because what we have here is people who are being driven by a belief system that includes this European mysticism, that includes this Atlantis-type mysticism, which consists of the essence of the Illuminati. And then, of course, you look at the Rosicrucians, which evolved from which the Illuminati evolved, along with many other occult societies. In founding it, of course, in 1776, the same year that America became a nation. So what we're seeing here, to me, and domestically and internationally, is the fulfillment of what has been planned for a long time, which does, if you compare it to the King James Version of the Bible, I believe this to be true. Because Satan does not have a single original thought or idea, but is merely a counterfeit of the real God. They're using the King James Bible to fulfill prophecy. And all of this historical.
And to lead people astray.
Exactly. That, and to me, that's...
In some of the earlier writings before Manly P. Hall, they talk about this in great detail, about the through men's own imaginations and the lust of their own hearts, that through mingling of true and false scriptures and true or false traditions, by commingling them, they are giving heed to seducing spirits, and through this lack of, as I'll say, motivation, scriptural and motivation and commitment to learning what the Lord wants for us, have introduced a spirit of devil worship in not only America, but in all of Christianity, where, we have the hierarchy of the Catholic Church, which looks upon, statues and other dead men of renown in Christianity, and have turned them into images themselves, which these traditions have been not only continued, but revamped and largely accepted.
Correct.
Because of lack of understanding of what God's Word is.
Now skipping ahead a little bit here. What's to come? Is there something in common, or is there this common link in that we can tie all of this together, for example? And it's interesting that, we know, of course, and folks, you know this, the Pike letter, Mazzini-Pike correspondence letter. Help me out here, Joe. You're muted. The Mazzini-Pike correspondence here.
The letter, the Three World Wars?
Right, exactly. Thank you very much.
I've been thinking about that, and I have not done adequate research as to the original, where that originally came from, or the authenticity of it. But the more I think about it, I'm not saying it's not true, and I'm not saying it's not derived from the conjuring of demon spirits to predict the future or to tell the future. At the same time, could that be a piece of disinformation? Just like I read in an older Satanist book that the secret map that what's his name said he had of Hitler's conquering of North America.
Right.
That was a piece of disinformation put out by British intelligence. Not sure how true that is, but either way.
Right. Well, in wrapping this up, because I do think, and folks, we didn't plan to get in detail on this tonight. So if we sound a little bit disjointed, it's because of our lack of coordination with information. But I think you get the idea. I think it's safe to say that our history, Americans' history, has been plagued by this Illuminati, Masonic, Satanic, Luciferian agenda. Sideshow. And if you look at the period of our Declaration of Independence, Adam Weishaupt, he officially founded his Order of Illuminati. May 1st, 1776. So in June of 1782, the year after the American victory over the British, and less than a month before the Congress was convened in Germany, at which the Illuminati and Freemasons were officially joined. The luminous symbol for the seat of Egyptian mystery initiation, the Great Pyramid of Giza, and the all-seeing eye of Horus, which is Lucifer, was ominously adopted by our own Congress. That's what we see the Great Seal on the back of the dollar bill. And that Great Seal, though, would only make its first public debut not back then, but in 1935. And isn't it interesting? Because you look at the Great Seal of the United States. Well, when, for example, did it make its public appearance, first public appearance? It was in 1935, when Vice President Henry Wallace was instructed or granted permission by Franklin D. Roosevelt to include the Great Seal on the back of the American dollar. And the Great Seal's Latin inscription is translated New Order of the Ages. It expresses the Masonic intent to plan. Okay, so although we're kind of giving this to you piecemeal, look at the timing of this. Isn't it a little bit curious? Because in March of 1935, when this was brought into the public domain, by the way, Henry Wallace was very much known to be an occultist, and of course Franklin Roosevelt, a Scottish Rite Freemason at 32nd degree. But Hitler in 1935 had emerged from and obtained support from occult secret societies in Germany and announced Germany's rearmament. The Illuminist emblem placed on the back of the American dollar bill under this occult Masonic, under those auspices, provided not only of a signal of America's Illuminist Masonic intent at that time, but at the same time provided an emerging metaphor for the American economic support which Hitler would enjoy. And we can right now just say, well, fast forward to today and consider all of what went on from the time period of before the Second World War, our involvement, to today, and just look at this, the Hitler National Socialist and the occult Illuminist Masonic influence. If you look back in a book written by Charles Hagmann, it was published back in 1983, it was called Trading with the Enemy, the Nazi-American Money Plot, 1933 to 1949. Henry Wallace was implicated under the auspices of FDR in facilitating trading with the enemy, lending support for Hitler's enterprise, and lengthening the war that facilitated the horrendous Holocaust of the Jews. Now, it's known now that Jewish leaders had pled with the British and American administrations at the highest levels back then to bomb the railroad tracks that enabled the transport of Jews en masse to concentration camp, to their tortures and deaths. But do you know something? We said, no, ain't going to do it. And history tells us that their pleas were ignored, while the American and British capacity for bombing was unleashed with vigor, bombing major cities ostensibly for the civilian support for Hitler's war. If we look at this and how this was set up, brilliantly set up by these, when I say brilliantly, certainly don't mean to intellectually brilliant. This is set up. I mean, who in the world would ever have suspected at the time that America had both supplied and supported, well, at least supported Hitler, and through channels supplied Hitler, enabling the Holocaust through this protraction of war, and refused to bomb the tracks that channeled these Jewish prisoners. So the bottom line here is America, even back in the 30s, and some might say this is conspiracy theory, we had the ability to save Jews, to mitigate the Holocaust, and FDR and the people at the time, including Wallace and others, declined to do so. Why is this important for today? Because these very policies extend, whether it's the Jews or all of humanity. Just think, folks, of if you were in that position of power, of authority, of the ability to save people, and in fact, if you're in that, if you have that ability today, but that doesn't meet with the objectives of your agenda, must you be? Or more appropriate, what agenda are you following? Certainly not a Christian agenda, but an agenda of Luciferianism and others. I'd urge people to read a book by William Guy Carr, Pawns in the Game, I believe it's called. I have it here, as well as he wrote another book as well. No, I'm sorry, Pawns in the Game. Just two different versions of it. Just mark that down on a piece of paper and pick that up. It's not an easy read, but it is a read that goes in depth, and it does indict the very leaders of America, as well as the political Zionists. So understand, Israel, the highest levels at Israel, they're not going to get off scot-free in his book, and certainly don't. But writes Carr, and I'll just give you one quote here. World war was to be fomented by using the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. The war was to be fought so that, among other things, the sovereign state of Israel could be established in the Palestinian region. Now, that answers a question, or a number of questions. Israel was set up to fail. I mean, I guess we can just say that right now. Israel was set up by the globalists to fail, by the political boundaries. If you look at how the political boundaries were set up after World War I and World War II, you can see that it was designed. World War I was designed to continue the conflict, or the end of World War I was designed, the rebordering of countries. It was designed to continue the conflict. And the same with at the end of World War II. So what we're doing here is creating this very close to Mazzini's Masonic machine. We're creating this necessity, this facilitation of this Illuminist Masonic plan for yet another war. And if we come to even more current events, think about, for example, well, I'll go back to World War II, just to bring it closer here. There was a book, it's called Trading with the Enemy. Standard Oil of New Jersey shipped the Nazis oil through Switzerland while the Allied forces endured restrictions on supplies and shortages that were widespread. Ford Motor Company trucks were built for Nazi troops with authorization from Ford directors here in the U.S. I mean, whose side are we on? The reason this is important to go back and say that, isn't this the same playbook that we're seeing today? Just different players? This is why people, in my view, people are not thinking big enough. If you go back to for example, the template of World War II, you can see that we were playing both sides, or the globalists were playing both sides. And in fact, the chairman of ITT supplied much of Hitler's communication system. Throughout World War II, the list of those who chose business as usual, even when the business was conducted with the enemies of the U.S., it's extensive. It's shocking. Has anything changed? The very forces who are subverting America and its Constitution are the same that have been subverting peace in the Middle East. It's the same playbook. It's the same pages. It's the same game plan. The names are the same. However, the generations might be and are grown in different branches of the family trees. But this is leading to a scenario of a world war in which, according to its roots, the occult plan, any type of religion other than that of the Luciferian religion is to be targeted by a one world government. That's the same with the economy, and that's the same with the politics. And if you go back to even lesser or more current history, I suppose is a more appropriate way to say it, if you look at under the watch of George Bush, 33rd degree Mason, and even under the watch of Scottish Rite Mason Bill Clinton, look at the conflict in the Balkans, what happened there, the horrible concentration camps, mass extermination, yes, of Islam or of Muslims, the ethnic cleansing, and the world was informed of ongoing events with live coverage of interred Muslims and reports from witnesses to the atrocities. So, same game plan, different targets, but you're looking at this ethnic cleansing. For what? For the purposes of population reduction and for the purposes of the New World Order plans. We could go on and on and on, but just understand the backstory. All I want to do is have people, folks. You can do this. You can find this information out there and find very authentic sources of information to teach to learn about Freemasonry, to learn about the Illuminati plans, to learn about all of this. So when we read these headlines about what's taking place in the Middle East today, we understand. Or when we read the headlines about this police state developing here in the United States, what's this all about? Our Constitution that was established and adopted here being trampled on. And there's no or very little resistance by those people who have been elected and who call themselves conservatives in Congress Yeah, they might have this CPAC, they might have this rally, and oh, isn't it great? All of raising the roof and clapping and saying this is all fine and good, and we're going to win these elections, and we're going to take care of it, but at that level, please understand, at that level, it's nothing more than professional wrestling at its finest. It's an entrancement. It's an illusion. You've got to look bigger. You've got to look bigger. You've got to look further. You've got to look at the very people who are orchestrating such events and follow the money up to the handlers. And it's going to be uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, because it indicts many of the people that we have understood as heroes. And I'm talking about more in the political realm today than of past. But folks, the enemy is within the gates here in this country right now. And we started out this hour talking about the domestic problems, talking about Connecticut being the flashpoint, perhaps, of a Second Amendment crisis. When I say Second Amendment crisis, will it be the flashpoint to lead with domestic violence, as Stan Dale talked about last night?
Yeah, and also in other interesting news that came up today, there has been a trader, Wall Street trader, who has jumped in front of a subway and killed himself today. In Manhattan, a trader was killed Tuesday morning by a speeding Long Island Railroad commuter train, marking at least the seventh suicide of a financial professional this year. Eddie Riley, 47, a trader at Midtown's Vertical Group, jumped in front of a LIRR train at 6 a.m. near the Soest train station. He was declared dead on the scene. Subheading, Banking is Not a Wonderful Life Now as Suicides Sweep Financial District. Another interesting death. Related to the other suicides. Same issues, possibly, maybe not. Apparently, he is a divorced father of 3, where his ex-wife did live in New York. One family friend who spoke on the trader's death told the Post that it didn't look good, his personal situation. But regardless, is this connected to the string of very strange financial deaths that we have seen as of late?
You know, folks, when we talk about banker or financial suicides, or the suicides of financial people, there will be. I mean, obviously, there's been. I will say this based on all the information I have, and V, the guerrilla economist, has talked about this as well. Look, there are hit squads, hit teams. Whatever you want to call them, taking people out. But then you've got people who are actually committing suicide. So yes, I mean, there's a mixed bag. And I was on a radio program not too long ago, and it didn't go well. The questioning didn't go well. And you know why it didn't go well? Because the questioner or the host was saying, well, I want to talk about the banker suicides. But he only wanted to talk about a very narrow aspect of the banker suicides. You've got to look at the links to the Forex market. You've got to look at the connections between, we'll say, Lee and Crane and McGee. You got to look at the J.P. Morgan, the nexus with the City of London. Okay, you've got to look at the Bruno Ixil, the London whale, the derivative trade, which was a major loss for J.P. Morgan. And folks, remember when V, the guerrilla economist, was on way back when, during this. It was during the time when the London whale trades they were saying, well, the losses were $2 billion. No. In fact, you can go on Wikipedia, you can go on even the certain news archived pieces. Folks, that loss, the London whale, Bruno Ixil, the loss for J.P. Morgan, was a massive loss, well beyond, by orders of magnitude, bigger than $2 billion. But what was lost? See, J.P. Morgan used collateral, used Chinese gold as collateral. Isn't it interesting when we talk about the bankers or the financial people committing suicide, having ties to J.P. Morgan, at the same time, the J.P. Morgan was talking about getting out of the commodities business. They sold their headquarters in Manhattan, One Chase Plaza. And we know that One Chase Plaza has got the largest private vault in the world, and it's connected to the U.S. Fed. The headquarters in Manhattan was sold to the Chinese for $720 million. It's fire sale price. It was valued at $3 billion. Why? Why was it sold at fire sale prices? For collateral. So what we're seeing here are traders, are people in the financial world either getting snuffed out or, yes, in some cases, certainly committing suicide for various reasons that include the gold fraud, the commodities fraud, which is several times bigger than LIBOR. If we look at this not in the narrow vacuum, but in the larger sense, we can get a bigger picture here. We can see now today 24 of the largest currencies in the world are bypassing the U.S. dollar. We can see the harbinger of economic collapse and things to come. We see the Fed pumping up the Ponzi scheme, trying to get everybody in before the collapse. People say, well, why? People said, there's been predictions of an economic collapse, 2012, 2013. Didn't happen. We'll be glad it didn't happen, but understand why it didn't happen. And I'll tell you why. Very simple. It's a Ponzi scheme, and how Ponzi schemes work is the operators attempt to get everybody or as many people involved, and when they're ready, when most are already involved and entangled and committed, and they've got your confidence, that's when the trigger will be pulled and not a day before. So look at it this way. Now, we're fortunate because that Ponzi scheme, I suppose fortunate might be, you might take issue with that, but it's still holding together. Your children still can go to school tomorrow and play on the playground, eat lunch in the cafeteria, come home and have books read to them. Life is normal for them. And perhaps life is normal for the people who are adherent to this normalcy bias, thinking it can't happen here. But when it does happen, life's not going to be normal for you, your kids. When you're out paying $10, $20, $30 for a loaf of bread, if you can find it, you're not going to think of life as normal. And if you say it can't happen here, can't help you. No one can help you. If you say it can't happen here, then God bless you. Or what's the saying? Go with God. And if I might add, just go. Because if you can't see what's happening today, China and Russia are in agreement to kill the U.S. dollar, the petrodollar, and of course we have help from the inside with the intent and the objective of the bankers, the big banks. And if you want to look at who's the Ponzi scheme brokers, well, you've got the usual suspects. Just look at the too big to fail, too big to jail. Look at the facilitators or the enablers that include the Fed, IMF, Bank of International Settlements. It's a huge deal, folks. And we're about to see it come back to us in spades. If you look at, and I do believe the design here in closing, if you look at what's going on in Ukraine, if you look at what's going on in the Middle East right now, you can, if you cannot, please see the connection between Western intelligence poking at Putin, Putin coming back and poking at us, and behind that, and when I say us, I'm talking Western intelligence, I should make that clear, but all of this is being done via proxy. So those people who are saying that, wow, the missiles flying from Gaza, it's those Muslims up to it again. No, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. Much bigger.
With that, we're going to take the top of the hour break. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the third and final hour of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Wednesday, March 12th, 2014. Hope you all are staying warm and out of the snow. At least where we are getting hit with a bunch of snow, and hopefully it will be ending tomorrow and back to the 50-degree weather we had before it came. But anyway, moving on to the news, a few headlines here before we take your calls. Town bans ammo magazines, but no one has turned any in. One day, the happy little town of Sunnyvale, California had a brilliant idea: ban all guns to stop the violence, or at least ban all the magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. And so they did, via a referendum. Unfortunately, the old trope of people clinging to their guns proved true. According to the town's police, no one has yet turned in any high-capacity ammo magazines. Sunnyvale residents were given the option to either sell the magazines, turn them over to the city's Department of Public Safety, but so far they're receiving nothing. Instead, a bunch of residents are hoarding their magazines in stockpiles outside the city's borders. A totally legal move, according to the new law, but still, I imagine they'll move out of town as soon as they can, says one Leonard Fayok, a plaintiff for the National Rifle Association's challenge to the law. Also, other gun news, I found this rather interesting. There was a child who was suspended or told to, Grand Island student refuses to change NRA T-shirt. 16-year-old Shane Kinney refused to turn his NRA T-shirt inside out when told to do so by a T-shirt in Grand Island, New York. And now the Grand Island High School sophomore confirms their son was recently made to serve a one-day in-school suspension resulting from the refusal to change his clothes after a determination the shirt he was wearing violated the school's dress code. Jeez. It goes on to say the shirt was worn before, but this time they said there was something about it that wasn't right. According to the parents, a teacher at the high school told Shane that the T-shirt was inappropriate. They said it was the guns, said Miss Kinney, noting the NRA emblem crossing the rifles adorning the shirt. While the school dress code mandates the attire not dispute or interfere with the educational process, it does not state anything specifically against the promotion of a political cause or the depiction of firearms. Shane's mother, who is also in the NRA and works in the school, says the shirt does not fit the bill either. Just by wearing a T-shirt, yes, it has a gun on it, but it does not mean you are in any kind of violence. He said, Shane, the student, said he would rather not turn his shirt inside out when told to do so, and as a result of refusing to comply, he was given a suspension. Just more insanity in the school system and craziness with the anti-gun people out there, really creating a chaos and confusion and punishment where there needs to be none. With that, we're going to go to the phones. We're going to start with area code 248. 248, you're up first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Doing great. I'm here right now. My father had to run real quick to check on something. He should be back in just a minute, so it's just Joe, but doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing good, Joe. Real good. I've been following you guys for quite a while, and I'm really appreciative to everything you guys bring to the table and all the research you do and all the people you bring in. You got a lot of good information. I was thinking about, the beginning of your show, you're talking about basically a takeover. And I'm thinking of that Paul Harvey commercial you play all the time where he says, if I'm the devil, and I think, well, if I'm Obama, well, I know this one here is going to get me on the red list. You know that, Joe, right?
I have an idea where you're going, but go ahead.
Okay, so I believe this guy is not going to want to leave office. It's going to stir something up. You know as well as I know that if there's a civil war or there's martial law or there is a war, he stays put. So, that being said, with Connecticut not looking like the safest place to be for abiding citizens these days, you keep that in mind, and then you keep the foreign troops in mind. Keep this in mind while you're in there. Everyone's like, well, where are they? We don't see them. Well, we have a lot of FEMA camps around. Believe me. There's where they're hiding. There's where they're getting all their food. There's where they're waiting for the almighty order. Now, if I were Obama and I was the enemy, you know about COG, obviously, a continuity of government.
Yes.
If I was in the White House and I was the enemy, I would say, well, let's see. I'll infiltrate some more of my guys in. They come in. And one day we have a little secret meeting and say, okay, all of us, let's go to where our COG building is. Nuke D.C. Our government's gone.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I come back out of my COG building and I got my DHS running around the rest of the country with a police force that I created who's going to listen to me. Boom. You got your takeover. It's as simple as that. And you guys bring so many good people on. You have such good information, and people always say to me, these guys, they talk about the collapse coming, and it doesn't come. I say, well, I'll try to give them a little example, give them a little small illustration. Okay, I started a business with a buddy of mine, and we brought a guy in. We'll call him Obama. And we were doing big jobs. We were doing pretty good, sizable jobs. $3-4 million jobs. Had about 100 electricians working for us. Well, Obama was always gambling the money away, so I pulled out of there and got out of there. Shortly after I left, the company went down, and my buddy said, "Man, we're bankrupt, but we're done. We'll call Obama, gamble all the money away, and we're done." Well, that company lasted about 6-7 more months after that statement. It took it that long to wind down. Now, America, being a corporation, how long do you think it would take for a corporation this big to wind down? So, as far as everyone's saying, they keep saying it's going to collapse, and it doesn't. It's going to collapse. There's no doubt about it.
Yes, it will.
But, what was that?
What you were saying about the FEMA camps, there are several theories of thought on these camps, and one is, where do you hide foreign troops? What about imagine a time of chaos here where there is no authority, no police, no government, and everybody's left to fend for themselves? Wouldn't that be a nice place to be locked into as leaders, knowing, not with the outlook of FEMA camps that we have, but as a sense of being protected?
Troops? Absolutely. And another thing something that kind of struck me, what you were talking about the phoenix bird, and I had read somewhere that the phoenix bird arises out of the ashes. I don't know if you ever read that, but if you do more research on the bird, you'll see that quote somewhere.
Oh yeah.
Well, that just leads me to think. I mean, you look on Steve's. Kind of made me put this together as I was on Steve Quayle's website, and I looked at one of his videos there, and it just happened to be an explosion at D.C. where a van pulls in with a suitcase nuke, and kaboomy. I thought, wow, that's pretty scary. You know, it's no doubt we're in trouble with the way things are being ran here. Well, I got that off my chest. I expect to knock on my door here in a few minutes.
Well, let's hope not. And
yeah, let's hope not. But listen, hey, I'll leave room for your other callers. I wanted to just tell you guys, thanks a million for everyone you bring in. And I urge your callers and your listeners, please send you guys some cash, even just a little bit of cash, because you guys are the mouthpiece for all of us who are thinking the same way you're thinking. And you guys got some big cojones over there. I tell you, I'm very happy there's people like you out there.
Well, thank you so much, and thank God for all the great listeners like yourself out there. We appreciate it, and thanks for sharing tonight. You take care, and God bless.
Okay, we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Have a good one. And back now is the old man, and you missed one caller who had some interesting ideas as to what could unfold with a collapse and where foreign troops could be hiding. But now that you're back, we're going to take another call.
Wait a second. Before we take a call, if I may, my sudden absences, let me just briefly explain this. Can I do that? Is that right? Or
I guess we'll allow it.
All right. I just want to thank everyone for being patient with me. I'm going to just say this one time. I really want to respect the privacy of my family.
So this has nothing to do with me.
You're adopted, remember? Folks, just briefly, and I'm just going to share this with you because you deserve to know. I mean, the past couple of weeks have been kind of rocky, and if you've noticed, I've been behind on everything, websites, articles, and people have sent me articles saying, what, have you gone rogue? Have you gone galt? What's going on? And let me just briefly mention this, and then I just want to move on. I just want you to know this. We certainly don't need any. We just don't. I just want to say this because I need to get this off my chest. 6 months ago, roughly, my mother-in-law, she's elderly. I mean, she's 80 years old. I mean, my wife's mother, of course, she had fallen and had a couple of fractures in her spine, and living alone, and she's widowed and such. But we had attempted. My wife, in particular, had done a lot of caring with her for her and getting her mobile again. But it just seemed like she never was able to get mobile again. And we had gone through the litany of tests and, in fact, moved her closer to us, and a lot of stuff was done. But we saw her health decline in particular, over the last 6 weeks. And I've had to do some things. I mean, it was a very time-consuming process to assist in this, in playing the support role for my wife. Well, here, she was admitted to the hospital on Sunday. Now, again, not having any diagnosis other than a fracture in her back that had healed, but she wasn't getting any better. And a litany of tests were done and were inconclusive. So imagine our surprise on just this week, Monday or Tuesday morning, I think it was, when my wife and I and my wife's sister, my sister-in-law, were taken into a room and said they were told by a doctor that she's got, at the outside, 3 weeks to live. They missed stage 4 cancer. Now, I don't know exactly how you miss stage 4 cancer. That's the bottom line. And the reason I was gone here is just to check. She was moved home today, to her home, basically to die. Shades of Obamacare. I'm not going to make this political. I just want to provide a reason for my recent absence. And if I've missed an email, and I know I have, and if I've missed a show, parts of shows, little bits here and there, it's because I've gone to another room to talk with somebody on the phone or to. But I do suspect that, next 2 or 3, that we're going to be arranging a funeral. Not 2 weeks, not 3 weeks. I just said that only because I think it's fair. I think it's only fair for you folks to know, because, my sudden disappearance is, well, gee, what are you doing? Going out and grabbing a beer and some wings? No. But really, if you don't mind, I mean, my wife is, everything's fine. Just respect our privacy a little bit, and thank you for your prayers. But I just thought it was important to provide to you the backstory as to, I haven't gone galt, I haven't gone rogue, I haven't stopped writing. I've just been really preoccupied. So thank you very, very much for your prayers, and thanks for understanding. And with that, let's get back into the calls. Where next?
We're going to go to area code 785. 785, you're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I can understand where your mother-in-law is coming from. Just a quick note. 2006, I was dying. I told the doctor I was shutting down. My body was shutting down, and they told me it was just fibromyalgia. I had to learn to live with it. I just continued to get worse, and by August I was very bad, and just having wonderful chiropractors that are not only just doctors, they're my friends. He suggested I go see this one doctor, which I had to drive 5 miles to. He was a celiac doctor, and with being celiac, your liver can shut down because it poisons your liver just like alcoholism. And he said I was in a really bad shape, and I knew I was. And he was a very honest, wonderful doctor. Told me I had about 2 weeks to live. And he told me everything to do, and long story short, here I am. But it wasn't...
Well, that's good.
that he got out of the medical business. He said he just cannot handle what they want doctors to do. So with that behind me, I can understand how your mother-in-law was all of a sudden diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, because it's happening with my friends around here, which is...
Isn't it happening more? I'm sorry to interrupt. Isn't it happening more and more? You see this happening more and more where it's all of us. I mean, 3 weeks you're up walking around, and then 3 weeks later you've got weeks to live. I mean, I'm seeing this more and more.
Yes. I've bought some medical books and done a lot of reading, and I just encourage your readers to do the same. I didn't call for this reason, although it is a very important reason, because I don't believe they want us to live. Your callers have said, and you've said, that it doesn't seem like this is going to happen. We've had all these, it's going to happen this year, it's going to happen next year. But studying the Bible, I've run across some really important things that back up everything you say, or maybe you back up everything the Bible says. And you were talking about each country has, I call them mascots. And down through time, we've had 4 great kingdoms: Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. And they've all had their mascots. And at the end of time, we have the same land masses. It hasn't changed land masses, but has changed kingdoms. And so when the lion of Babylon was first in prophecy, it had eagle's wings. Well, at the end, when you get into Revelation 13 and different parts of Daniel, you'll find out that lion had its wings plucked off. Well, the lion now is Great Britain, and the wings of an eagle were plucked off. Well, who's the eagle? That's the United States. And it's Great Britain going to have a mouth like a man that speaks, because it says here in Revelation 13:2, and his mouth, Great Britain, as a mouth of a lion. So that kingdom is going to do some speaking. So whoever is the power in that area of Great Britain is going to speak. And then it has this composite animal, and most of its body is like a leopard. Well, we know that the leopard is China, and we know that this composite animal has feet of a bear, and we know that's Russia. And the leopard had wings of a fowl. We know that's France. So somehow France is going to fit into this picture. And I'm just wanting to call and let your listeners know that you're right on course as far as I can understand the Bible and the things that you're saying and the time frame that we're working with, because there's a time element too, and it looks like it is this year, and it looks like it's during Pentecost, which is around June. And so I don't know if I'm right. I don't know a lot of things, but I'm looking at it, and I would encourage your listeners to do the same. Thank you for taking my call and being so good.
Well, thank you. And I have to say this, your analogy or your reference to especially Great Britain, the United Kingdom, is so important, I think, because there, I believe, will arise the very person that we're talking about as being perhaps the Antichrist. Now, some people will disagree, and you feel free to disagree, but I think the way you presented it, the most coherent method, way that I've heard it, I agree with you 100%. And I think that the only thing I would caution you and others about is the time. Beyond that, because we don't know, I don't think it's going to be a direct, the angle of descent trajectory is going to be straight downward. But I think it's going to be more like a staircase type effect. However, and that could take us out into how many years in the future, I don't know, but I think you're right on the money with the UK. And I think we really need to watch the players of the royal family extremely with precision. So thank you for that call. Fantastic.
Yeah, I just would like to clarify. I don't know if it's this year, but this is the time frames it looks like, just like the kingdoms were in the past, so they apply in the future, which is right now and future. Just like Pentecost will just only be this year, but it's in the future. So in those groupings and in that time frame, I didn't mean to make it sound this year. I'm really nervous. So thank you for taking my call.
That's okay. Well, thanks for calling. And call any time. And very astute observations, in my view. And certainly the Bible is the ultimate authority. We just kind of, Joe, we just kind of really deal with the Bible, use that as the reference. And that caller was great. It was great, in my view.
Absolutely. And I'd like to do some shows sooner than later, but whenever it is on God's time, specifically pertaining to certain aspects of Bible study.
Pastor Langford, who is regular on Sundays, he wrote the book, Revelation 13 Revealed. It's an easy read. It's an interesting read. There were some points there that he brought out that I did not see, because I've read, in fact, there was a book called The Antichrist and a Cup of Tea. Now, that book does make some conclusions that I don't agree with. On the other hand, I'm not saying they're totally incorrect. I think that it would be like conducting an investigation, a very complex investigation, and you've got maybe a pool of a dozen suspects that you've limited down, and it's a massive crime scene and certainly a lot of suspects, and you've narrowed it down, which this would be. And it's my understanding from reading the Antichrist and a Cup of Tea, which is I'd recommend as it's not an easy read. It's more of a reference guide. It's a pretty lengthy, pretty compact but lengthy book. It gets into the coat of arms and the symbolism and such. I would recommend that as a real good reference guide. But having said that, I believe that they conclude that it's Prince Charles who's got that potentiality there. Well, to limit it down to one person, a little bit maybe ambitious. However, I would say we're in the right room. We're just not, perhaps, they may be correct, but I would be looking at others as well. Maybe the junior prince is, or one of them anyway, perhaps more than likely is, in my view, perhaps in the front runner. And that's just my personal view. If I had to make a guess today, that's where I would look. All right.
Moving along here, we're going to go to area code 918. 918, you're up next. Thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight?
Hey, Doug and Joe. This is Todd calling from Tulsa. It's good to talk to you guys again.
Hey, Todd from Tulsa. Great to have you.
Yep. Hey, I wanted to go a different direction tonight. I wanted to talk about something that happened here in the Oklahoma legislature a couple of days ago. I'll post a copy of this in the chat for everybody to go take a look at. But
okay.
The Oklahoma Senate passed a bill on Monday, and the bill was titled Gold and Silver Coins Providing for Status as Legal Tender in the state of Oklahoma. I went and read the bill. It actually only calls to allow gold and silver coins minted from the federal government, so it's a little deceiving in that aspect. And, as being an Oklahoma resident, I'd like to think that, hey, this is great because Utah is the only other state that allows gold and silver as legal tender. And so I'd like to celebrate that, hey, this is a great move for us to get away from the Federal Reserve System. But I just had this really strange feeling when I was reading this that, if we look at Connecticut and what they tried to do with the gun laws there, they tried to do it in a state that they thought they could pass it. And I'm just wondering if, what you guys think, or maybe it's a question you hold back for Viva next time of, these kinds of proposals at the state level. Is it potentially an attempt to get our gold and silver?
Interesting question. And I think that's a valid question. I talked to V about this. So
I have your link. I have your link here, Todd, and thanks for posting that. I'm going to look over this and read through this and see what I can find here. Dad, what were you saying as far as V?
Well, I think that V and we had discussed this, if not on air, off air. I do believe that the states that are going back to the silver and gold as legal tender, I don't see it as being on par, for example, with gun legislation or anti-gun legislation, depending on which side you're on. I do see it, however, as being a very hollow gesture, or a very small gesture to placate the masses. We're beyond that.
Or what if it's a way of trying to create pockets of Fed resistance the best way they know how, without a end the Fed type campaign? I mean, we've got to look at both sides.
You mean to mitigate the campaign against the Fed?
Right.
Or to at least neuter it?
To take action against the Fed without coming out and saying as much.
Well, caller, what do you think? I mean, I don't believe the gold and silver confiscation is going to be like it was back in the 30s, or turn over your gold. I do believe, nor do I believe that there's going to be anything significant happen with gold or silver in terms of confiscation. I believe that the value is going to rise against the dollar. Well, more appropriately, the U.S. dollar is going to fall against the cost or the price or value of gold and silver.
And following that thought, only the small areas of people that will be able to use it, I mean, will be it. For the most part, people will be stuck via circumstance in their location, or be stuck in an area where people are not bartering for things. So it will be useless regardless, except in certain.
Well, useless to the extent that you're not going to go out and buy necessarily. You're not going to go out and buy a car. Now, I do suspect there will be occasions, but not widespread occasions, where you will be able to do that.
Right.
Pay off your house.
With thousands of people starving, we'll say, in certain cities, you're not going to find too many people that are going to want to trade off some of their food for any metals. You might be able to get certain assets, but
well, let me clarify, if I may clarify that. Yeah, you're not going to find that happen in the first 90 days or even 120 days of a crisis. But you will have, by having the metals, the physical possession of metals, and that does not mean, by the way, of having them in a safety deposit box in a bank, but having physical possessions of the metals will preserve your wealth. So when, after all the chaos does end, you have transferred your fiat currency into a commodity, and that, I believe, caller, is something that you need to do, that everyone needs to do, just to preserve the extra wealth that they've attained. And it's not really going to be valid until the chaos period is over, and then there's that reset that goes into effect. But the question now becomes, will it, when that reset does take place, will it be, are we going to be looking at this global dominant economic system that will make it difficult, or even on the it's going to be like a black market scenario to me. But token resistance is what I would call the Oklahoma bill. Now, I could be understating it. If I am, perhaps someone could educate me otherwise.
Yeah, well, like I said, I just I had that thought today, and I've been trying to read as much of the bill as possible to try to kind of figure out where they're coming from. And we're a conservative state for the most part, so I'd like to think that this is as Joe said, maybe a silent protest against the Federal Reserve. I certainly won't be surrendering any of my silver before I surrender my brass and lead, but it's just to me, I think it could be something to keep our eye on. Especially, would like to hear maybe what what V's take on it would be. But just thought it would be worth mentioning, for the listeners.
We'll get V on. We'll snag him and say, hey, come on, and comment on this, because he does have a couple of things that I seriously I need to talk to him. We need to talk to him about that, as well as the recent. He had posted a couple of things on his website, roguemoney.net, that caught my attention, including what's going on in the foreign markets with the foreign exchange. So thank you for that. And we'll check V on. All right, but thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, I'll let you back to callers. We'll talk to you guys later.
All right, buddy.
God bless.
And Joe, that's a piece of news that we should have covered too, the Oklahoma legislation.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, in fact, it passed quickly, and just I didn't get into it. But
one piece of information I did see here is a Turkish protester and police officer die in clash. This is a story that is completely underreported, is with the unrest in Turkey. A protester in Istanbul died from a head injury, and a police officer suffered a heart attack during Turkey's worst day of civil unrest since the anti-government protests swept the nation last summer, local media said late on Wednesday. Riot police clashed with demonstrators in several Turkish cities on Wednesday as mourners buried a teenager wounded in the protest last June, whose death this week after 9 months in a coma sparked a fresh wave of disturbances. Defiant Prime Minister Erdogan, already battling a damaging corruption scandal weeks ahead of elections, cast the latest unrest as part of a plot against the state. Police fired water cannons, tear gas, and rubber bullets on major Istanbul Avenue to stop tens of thousands of protesters from reaching the central Taksim Square. There were similar scenes of the capital of Ankara and the Aegean coastal city of Izmir. And it goes on to state that there are and have been riots, unrest going on for almost a year now in Turkey.
This is something, folks, if you don't know this name, or if you're unfamiliar with this name, Sybil Edmonds has talked about this. Her website is boilingfrogspost.com. boilingfrogspost.com. If you haven't heard of Sybil Edmonds or don't know her background or have never read anything from there, I'd recommend checking that out. That's boilingfrogspost.com. I did say that correctly the first time, right? Okay. She gets into the monetary aspect of, and a lot of her information mirrors the Guerrilla Economist, where you've got Western intelligence assets. And by Western, you're talking NATO, France, Great Britain, and so on, U.S., who are, they'll go out and put a sniper up and shoot both the protesters and the cops to create this and foment and exacerbate the...
That's being reported in Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly.
Western-backed special ops CIA people have been said to be the snipers.
Exactly. And the State Department of the United States, especially Victoria Nuland, knows very well what's going on. Kerry knows very well what's going on. By extension, Obama and his handlers know very well what's going on. And they're bit players, or they're at least the stage actors of those pulling the strings behind this, the money. And all wars are bankers' wars, and all conflicts are. You just understand that the globalists are financing all sides of these conflicts, and the globalists are the very people we talked about earlier in the show. It's those people who are financing this, and it's the actors from the Western countries, including but not limited to our own CIA intelligence agencies and what have you, who are fomenting and exacerbating the chaos on the streets. So there you have it. So we're going to try to get Sybil Evans on to talk.
Excellent. We're going to try and fit a few more calls in as we're running into the last 15 minutes of the program. 916 area code. You're up next. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, Joe. Doug, it's Lars from California.
Hey, Lars. Good to hear from you.
Yeah.
Nice hearing from you guys. And might give you a shout out with a shofar. Hey,
okay. Well, yeah, make sure you do that, but warn us before so we can put the headphones in a box.
I'm going to ask for a special blessing upon your mother-in-law.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Amen. Did you guys hear about Joel Osteen's church, the robbery at his church?
$600,000.
Yeah.
And $600,000.
I'd be looking, and just from what I've read about this, and I got a little bit more information than maybe has been reported, but
wasn't me.
Yeah, it wasn't Joe. I'd kind of be looking at maybe something inside, something internal, because just as an FYI. Okay.
Yeah, it just kind of doesn't sound good, and with it being one of the biggest churches, and I also find kind of interesting the timing. There's been some discussion about the spirit of Judas, as coming forth. I've been to a few conferences, and so I've heard that twice. And then with Passover coming in a few weeks, I just found it kind of interesting how, the man with the money betrays the Son of God. And then also I just saw there's been about 50 to 75 rockets within the last 6 hours that were coming out of Gaza. So I checked the news, and it sounds like it is valid, but so we just got to continue to lift up
Absolutely.
that area also. But also, I do know that the Lord, He's working something in this day that, like you said in Habakkuk, that if He was to tell us, we wouldn't believe Him. So, and the other thing, the last few nights, you guys have had a lot of people talking about the rapture, and I'm just prepared. I want to be prepared, and the one thing about the pre-trip, I would ask all the listeners, if you were to die really right now could you honestly say that you're serving the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength, commandments, to love your neighbor? And I remember, Benjamin Baruch was on with Shannon a couple weeks ago, and I love him so much, and just by the Spirit, the way he speaks, and he was just saying that, he just said, I am. And he said, but, if you were to really ask ourselves, and that's something we need to all ask ourselves, am I really serving the Lord with all my heart? And I just found a scripture, Matthew 16, verse 28. Verily I say unto you, there will be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So just something to ponder to all individuals. I think that I'm prepared for the long haul and for the last trump. And if we get caught up in the first wave, praise God. But so let me give my shofar.
That's fine. Okay, good. Yes.
No, go ahead.
No, just to comment very briefly on your question. I'm not sure too many of us could actually answer in the affirmative on your questions. If we were to be completely honest with ourselves, very few of us can say, yeah, you know what, I've really done everything I could. And I think very few of us could say that. And that's not to demean those, listening. I just think we have to really be more honest with ourselves than at any other time ever, just to make sure that we can solidify our place in eternity. But so, yes, very, very good points.
That's it, Doug. And by the Spirit of the living God, I'd ask that the Holy Spirit would just, convict all of us and get us lined up, like you say, right now. If I wasn't doing it 2 hours ago, right now is the right time. There's time is short for the flesh of this world. And, he is returning, and he's going to come with vengeance, and he's going to come with a shout. And, when you have time and your listeners, read Proverbs 47, Proverbs 47, and also Isaiah 61. And then I'm going to sound the shofar. And, Lord, I just lift up just Doug's family, Father God, and Joe's family, Father God, and I ask in the name of King Jesus, when I sound the shofar, that you would just give this precious daughter just a blessing and give her just peace and give her strength and give her just a mighty touch from you, Lord. In Jesus' name. My small, but Lord, we thank you for you are our trump, and we thank you for what you're doing in Jesus' name.
Hallelujah. In Jesus' name. Thank you so much. Wow.
Hallelujah.
Talk about the needle. You made the needles jump on that one. That's pretty cool. All right, brother. Thank you.
All right. Love you guys. Take care.
Love you too. Have a great night. We're going to squeeze one more phone call in here. We're going to go to 928 area code. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, and last caller of the evening.
Good evening, Doug and Joe.
Good evening.
This is Robert Wilcox in Arizona.
All right.
I go by the name of God's Dog in your chat room. I've been listening to you guys for a long time, and I certainly appreciate what you do. I'd like to give a short testimony, if you will allow it.
We got about 6 minutes or so before the end of the show, so if you can keep it in 6 minutes, go for it.
I'll go as fast as I can. September 1980, I fell off a 100-foot cliff, and I was dead for 5 minutes. Now, I went to a place where the first thing that came to me was, what kind of light is that, and where's it coming from? I'm an electrician. I've been one for 35 years. Worked at Intel, Los Alamos, Sandia, a lot of big-time establishments, and I know lights. But I couldn't figure out what kind of light this was. Now, the crazy thing about it is there was no shadows. The second thing that came to mind was I was more at peace than I've ever been in my life. I was born poor, raised poor, but the thought came to me that everything they ever tried to tell you about it's true. The afterlife, the hereafter, when we die. And then I met a man, and I didn't bother asking his name because there was no doubt about who was in charge. Best way I can describe him is Charlton Heston, 10 Commandments, the well-groomed beard, the beautiful robe. And he's holding a book. As I walked up to him, he said, "Welcome, Robert." And the thought came to me, how did he know my name? I told him, "I don't think I'm supposed to be here." And he said, "Why is that?" And I said, "I have a 6-month-old baby at home, and nobody will raise that young man the way I intend to. And I have a beautiful wife, and I promised I would take care of her. If you let me go back, I promise you, I will make a difference in somebody's life." I woke up, and one of my best friends was CPRing me. I fell off the cliff at 1:30 in the afternoon. They got me to Mercy Hospital in Durango by helicopter at 2:30 the next morning. So I'm laying there in bed, 6 o'clock the next morning, and this little old lady comes in my hospital room. And she's got her walker, and she says, "Are you the one they brought in on the helicopter last night?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "Well, you woke me up." And I said, "Well, excuse me. I'm just happy to be alive." So she turned around and left, and pretty soon here comes this another little lady in my hospital room. And she said, "Are you the one they brought in on that helicopter?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "Well, half your face ain't gone." And I freaked out. "Nurse, bring me a mirror. Let me see what's going on here." But I was fine. I got a dislocated shoulder and a fractured ankle out of it. Now, it gets real deep real quick. 10 years to the day, September 1st, 1990. My tool buddy falls off a feeder deck at one of the power plants, dead on impact. The song that I heard when I pulled in the parking lot that morning was a song called "Run to the Battle." And that's my word to anybody that cares, anybody that's in the game. God's got our hand. He's in the battle with us. He said he will never leave us. And you have to stand on that promise. Now, the peace that passes all understanding, Doug, when I got there, no hint of my sin. No hint of it. And that drags me down, brother. That's a change we all try to drag with us to the cross. Leave them go. Leave them go. Jesus said, "Your sins are as far away from you as the east is from the west." We have a leader. We have a commander. Stay close to your king. Now, I pray that God will open your spiritual eyes so that you'll see those flaming chariots on the hills around you, protecting you. We have nothing to worry about. God's promises. Hey, I love you guys. I hate it when I miss one of your shows, and I thank God for the archives. I thank God that there's people like you up on the wall, and I pray that God would give you strength, give you courage, and continue the fight, brother. I love you. And with that, I'll say good night.
What a great testimony, Dog, and thank you so much for sharing that with us tonight.
Thank you so much. What a great, yes.
I'm not very good on stage. I'm sorry. I get real nervous.
Yeah, we do too, but we just drink a lot to hide it. Just kidding.
No, that was fascinating.
Absolutely.
Very uplifting.
Very much so. And we must remember that we are fighting in the battle from a position of victory, or a battle already won. And very good testimony, my friend. God bless you. Thank you so much. Folks, we've reached the close of the show. I want to thank you for your time, for investing your time, very precious time with us.